Good evening and welcome to the 2026 Republican gubernatorial primary debate live from South Carolina ETV studios in Columbia. I'm Gavin Jackson. Early voting is underway and Election Day is nearly a week away on June 9th. And we are joined in studio with 3 of the 6 candidates running for the Republican gubernatorial nomination. And they are 1st District Congresswoman Nancy Mace, 5th District Congressman Ralph Norman, and Spartanburg Senator Josh Kimbrell. We thank you for honoring your commitment to participating in tonight's debate. And Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evett backed out of the debate early Sunday morning. That move was followed by Rom Reddy and then Attorney General Alan Wilson. So again, thank you all for participating tonight. Now, before we begin tonight, there are some ground rules. Each candidate will have the opportunity to make a 1-minute opening statement, and from there they will have 1 minute to answer the questions. And if necessary, I will allow for a 30-second rebuttal. And just so the candidates know, we're not going to allow for a rebuttal to a rebuttal. So please try and strategize how you will. And also no crosstalk when someone else is speaking. Candidates drew names when they arrived for starting order. And Congresswoman Nancy Mace, we go to you for your opening statement.
Thank you, Gavin, and good evening. Serving South Carolina is the honor of my lifetime. At the age of 17, when I decided to stop going to school, my father, who was a retired Army general, my mom, a retired school teacher in Goose Creek, said, "You have to start going to work." And so that's when I took a job at the Waffle House on College Park Road in Latson. My family is from South Carolina. I've raised my children here. I would eventually go on to college, and I would become the first woman to graduate from the Citadel, the military college of South Carolina, 26 years ago. When I was in college, many people might not know, I taught myself to code. And my first job out of school was as a computer programmer, making about $35,000 a year. And I know the value of hard work. I know the value of a good education. I know the value of having to go back and get your high school diploma when you've had some hard times and how tough it can be here in the state of South Carolina. I look forward to the debate tonight. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you. Congressman Norman.
I'm Ralph Norman from Rock Hill, South Carolina. Honored to be with you this evening. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a businessman. We spent 40 years in the private sector. And folks, I'll just ask you, how long are we going to allow for our roads and bridges to deteriorate? How long are we going to have our businesses who are paying exorbitant insurance rates? How long are we going to put up with that? How long are we going to put up with our electricity costs that are out of the roof? How long are we going to let lawyers pick our judges? Folks, it's time for a businessman to run this state, which needs to be run like a business. How long are we going to allow politicians to serve forever and not go home and live under some of these laws that they make? It's been an honor to serve, and it's going to be an honor to serve as your governor. I look forward to the debate.
Thank you, Congressman. Senator Kimbrell.
Well, good evening. I'm happy to be here tonight with the 2 members who showed up. And one of the things I would applaud Congressman Norman and Congresswoman Mace is for being here. Behind us tonight, you have the words of the Constitution, which starts with "We the people," not we the 30-second TV ad. We're actually going to have a substantive debate about what really matters. You know, I've heard from many legislators across this country when I've met with legislators from other states. The South Carolina politics is a blood sport. Politics is rough. We all know that. But in this state, it's always tougher than everywhere else because it becomes a personality contest, nasty attacks versus actual substantive debate. When I was in college, I worked in the governor's office under Mark Sanford in his first term. The same 4 issues, judicial reform, tax reform, regulatory reform, all these, and frankly, school choice, were all the same issues we talked about 20 years ago. Why can't we advance the ball down the field? Because our campaigns descend into chaos versus substance and real issues that matter to people of South Carolina. I look forward to talking about those tonight.
Thank you. Congressman Norman, we start with you for this first question. What do you say to South Carolinians who are skeptical of politicians saying one thing and then doing another? How can they trust you to do what you say?
First of all, the same concern South Carolinians have about politicians saying one thing and doing another, same things I'm concerned about. Politicians who particularly run as Republicans, who campaign on less government, less taxes, and then morph into something different. What makes me different, I have got a track record, a voting record that is the most conservative of anyone in this race. I've been a taxpayer hero. I have, with Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA, rated 96 and above. Club for Growth, Heritage Foundation. We are what we vote. And I'm just the most conservative, and I'm proud of it. And I'll take these conservative values to the people of South Carolina. And there will be no more exorbitant budgets that overruns. There will be no more giveaways. We're going to straighten this state out.
Senator Kimbrell.
Look, you've got to be able to actually deliver on an agenda from day one. Everybody campaigns talking about great ideas and what they're actually going to do, but when election day comes, we realize most of that's not really true. When I got elected in 2020, defeating a 30-year Democrat in Spartanburg County, I have been the leader in the Senate for tax reform, income tax reform, the biggest income taxes in the history of South Carolina, biggest income tax cuts in the history of South Carolina, regulatory reform, and significant judicial reform. But we have to have people who are willing to actually not just talk the talk, but actually deliver. I'm the only person in the entire race that's ever passed 5 major pieces of legislation in South Carolina legislature as the primary sponsor, including a constitutional referendum in 2024 that y'all passed by 85%, prohibiting illegal immigrants to vote in this state. Talk is cheap. Results are hard. And one of the things I at least applaud everybody here tonight is just showing up and talking about what really matters in South Carolina. You can't just come and be a conservative in a campaign year. You've got to do it when it counts, when you actually have to govern.
Congresswoman Mays.
I love this question. Thank you. In talking to voters for the last couple of months on the campaign trail, this is one of the #1 topics that comes up with people, particularly for those who are undecided. And I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing a historically low turnout in the Republican primary this year, because people are sick and tired of politicians who say one thing and then do another, that aren't going to Congress or going to become governor, going into the state house or general assembly or state senate. They go in, they come richer than ever before, and everyone else is poor around them who's not in elected office, who's not one of the powerful. And I would say, look at our track records. I have a very conservative voting record with the Heritage Foundation, with the Club for Growth. I've never voted to raise taxes. And in fact, one of the few things the press gets right in this race is that I'm the only candidate running for governor that has a detailed plan to eliminate the state income tax. But we can't stop there. Our seniors and those on a fixed income are suffering, and we need a strong fiscal conservative who's willing to go to the bully pulpit and work with the legislature to make your life easier and more affordable today, better than ever before.
Thank you. Senator Kimbrell, this next question starts with you. All 3 of you up here serve in the legislative branch. When it comes to executive overreach, which entity provides the strongest check? Congress, the judiciary, or states, in your opinion?
I mean, I think the founders designed it for every one of those to interact with the other, but the states under the 10th Amendment are supposed to be the bulwark against overreach. Now, I'll tell you, one of the things we've seen in South Carolina is we haven't had a good balance in recent years. Even this past weekend, on Memorial Day weekend, I spent my weekend in Columbia. Everybody else got to spend their weekend in front of the barbecue. And that's because the President of the United States asked for a 7-0 plan for redistricting. The President asked for this back in early February. I supported it in January. And I voted every single time with the President of the United States in the White House to make this a 7-0 state back at the beginning of the year. The governor refused to do that until it was politically convenient. After a sine die, after the legislature already adjourned, we get called back. A deal is made that we get called back. We spend our Memorial Day weekend here so he can tell the White House he's helping them. And then ultimately we find out there's a deal that's made to help the lieutenant governor who's not even here tonight. And ultimately that's because she's supposedly picking the governor's lieutenant, or her lieutenant governor is going to be the governor's son. Ladies and gentlemen, this goes back to the earlier question. Are you really going to do what you say you're going to do? You can't just be a conservative who says I'm going to do something. You can't give a false answer.
Thank you,
actually
Senator.
do the job, and that's why I'm here today.
Thank you. Congresswoman Mays.
Well, certainly it's not today's judges. We have so many activist judges at the federal and the state level. There is no check and balance there. And in fact, that's where a lot of weaponization is happening in the country against everyday hardworking Americans. It goes back to the states. And I think that's one of the reasons many of us, I know I am running for governor, because the states, the government closest to the people is a government that can govern best. And in this case, we haven't had a real conservative governor in a very long time in South Carolina that is going to inject the will of the people. And that's why you're seeing, I think, such a low turnout this year, is because people don't trust the process and they want someone that they can trust, someone that will bend the will of the people into the legislature. But that's a state's job to do that. And you're seeing that pushback, I think, in South Carolina at its greatest. And Congress isn't it. There are 2 of us on the stage tonight that are in Congress. I know one of the reasons I'm leaving is because I believe in term limits. I said 6 years, not going back. I'm served my 6 years at the end of this year. But I've been very frustrated to see it become broken and not bend to the will of the people.
Congressman Norman.
Well, the system is broken, and when you look at the results of the legislature in South Carolina, it's been bloated budgets, it's been priorities that have not been for we the people of this great state. The executive branch, and as governor, as CEO, you've got to use your voice. You've got to go to the bully pulpit and sell the things that you think are important to this state. And this state deserves it now, because I know the people that are coming here. I know the other states that are emptying out to come to South Carolina. We've got to protect the heritage and the values of this great state. Our judges, the overreach, and I hear it from law enforcement all the time, and from families who have been victimized by criminals who are let out over and over and over again. That's where we have to take action. And Governor, you have to promote that. It doesn't happen by itself. I will be a strong CEO for the state, and I will use my voice in the bully pulpit to make sure it's a conservative voice.
Congresswoman Mace, this next question starts with you. That being said, but everyone just answered that question. The governor's office has slowly gained power over the years. How do you work with the legislature to get your priorities accomplished? And for example, do you support the state Republican Party's federal lawsuit against the legislature to close primaries?
Well, the greatest threat to democracy is open primaries here in the state of South Carolina. That is something we have to fix in our state. We've been talking about it. Republicans have been talking about closed primaries for over a decade. And have they done it yet? No, they have not. Because the governor's seat is such a weak position, the governor does have to work with the legislature. I came from the state legislature. I was in the state house for 3 years. I know many of the state house lawmakers and state senators. I have great relationships with the president and members of his cabinet and secretaries when we're dealing with federal issues. Having that relationship, those relationships would be very good for the state. But it does go back to using your voice, using your bully pulpit. The reason that we don't have 15 genders on our college forms anymore in the state of South Carolina is because last year I used my bully pulpit to raise awareness of the issue, and the colleges and universities that were doing that stopped doing that. There's a reason that they're not doing gender affirming care at MUSC, because 2 years ago when I found out that was happening, I shut it down by using the bully pulpit, and that's what I'll continue to do as governor.
Thank you. Congressman Norman.
Well, the bully pulpit has not been used in a long time for South Carolina, and it should be. You ought to set the agenda, as most CEOs do. And you take the recent thing about redistricting. The General Assembly didn't want to do that. It's pretty obvious. I predicted that. I called for it a year ago. It should have been done, and they didn't really have the appetite, nor did they want it. And President Trump was right to since the Supreme Court ruling, to insist on this. But the fact is, you've got to sell what you're talking about, and you've got to make changes in this state. It's going to take a strong CEO as governor to go to each one of you, to say why the judges shouldn't be elected by trial lawyers, to tell you why term limits make a difference, to say why the government is out of control and you're making South Carolina more unaffordable. I will change that, and I will highlight it when I become governor.
Senator Kimbrell.
Well, for starters, I've actually worked hard in the legislature to close our primaries. That being said, the former General MacArthur back in the World War II era said there's no substitute for victory. You can introduce all the legislation you want. It matters what actually passes. And on everything from tort reform, regulatory reform, major tax reform, and passing a constitutional amendment to ensure illegals don't vote in this state, I've been the primary sponsor or major co-sponsor of every one of those bills to make sure it happens. That's what you need in the governor's office. There's two approaches. Constitutionally, the governor's office is relatively weak. You have to use the bully pulpit. I worked for the Sanford administration when I was in college, and Governor Sanford's approach was just steamroll the legislature, force him into his agenda. That didn't work very well. The current governor, Governor McMaster, and by extension his lieutenant governor's approach is, y'all pass a bill, we might look at signing it. Well, the lieutenant governor can't sign it, but the governor can. And so the idea is, send us a bill. You got to have somebody that's going to quarterback and actually lead to make sure things actually happen. Governor Carroll Campbell in the 90s was the best modern governor, and he was a former state senator.
Thank you. Congressman Norman, this next question starts with you. One important power the governor does have is making several key appointments. When it comes to evaluating a person for a top position, what is more important, their merit or their personal beliefs?
Well, when I appoint the many positions as governor that I will look for somebody that's a business person that's been successful in their own right to head different agencies. Like my lieutenant governor will be the road czar. he will be focused on fixing what's one of the most important things in this state that's dilapidated now. So it's you have to have somebody that's aligned with your conservative views. You have to have somebody that has the courage, and the governor will set out the blueprint as what we want to accomplish, and we will make sure that the people we put in office are experts in their particular field. No cronyism. Under my administration, I won't reward people who have either supported me or given money on our campaign. I put solid business people who want what's best in the best interests of South Carolina, and I think that's what the people deserve, and I think that's what they'll get when Ralph Norman's elected governor.
Senator Kimbrell.
I think both matter. I mean, in the legislature now, I'm in the advice and consent role. In the Senate, we have to confirm folks. You got to make sure not only are they capable of doing a job, but they have the character to do it and carry out your agenda. There's a lot of people who are brilliant and competent. I think of former President Bill Clinton. He was brilliant and competent, but I wouldn't leave him alone with my wife. That being said, you've got to have people who are going to be able to carry out your agenda. Competence matters. So does character. So does an agenda. We dealt recently in a confirmation hearing in the South Carolina Senate for Dr. Edward Simmer, who, by the way, Lieutenant Governor Pam Evans completely supported, who was one of the lockdown guys that everybody called South Carolina's Fauci. And so I voted against him in confirmation in the South Carolina Senate Medical Affairs Committee. The Senate rejected him. And then the governor chose to appoint somebody even more liberal than Dr. Simmer. So at the end of the day, character matters as well as competence. You need people who are competent and have character and will carry out the agenda for conservatives as a governor.
Congresswoman Mace.
Well, it's both. It's merit, it's personal beliefs, it's experience. For me, it's hard work. What is your work ethic? I want people who are going to eat, breathe, and sleep South Carolina. And when it comes to some of these positions, we have some people that have been in positions of power for decades. And if you keep putting the same people in charge, nothing is ever going to change. And that has to stop. What is definitely not going to happen in a Mace administration is we are not going to appoint Biden donors, lockdown queens like we did with the public health director that the governor and lieutenant governor picked. She was all for lockdowns, shutting business down, shutting states down during COVID. We will not do that under a Mace administration. I do want to make one note about the DMV. I do want the DMV run by someone who has managed a Chick-fil-A. So I think that would make things run a lot better for those who are trying to get their licenses renewed here in the state of South Carolina. Quick and fast.
Shots fired at Schwedo right there. Right.
He's a great guy.
Question number 5 starts with you, Senator Kimbrell. The biggest check on power is the ballot box. A Legislative Audit Council found a report found in January 2024 that of the then 3.7 million registered voters, 3 ballots were cast in elections in 2022 and 2023 under a dead registered voter's name. 10 incarcerated inmates voted in elections between 2010 and 2021, and 212 folks on parole or probation for a felony offense voted between 2000 and 2022. No incidences were reported of a non-U.S. citizen with state IDs or driver's licenses voting. And I have a 3-part question, so feel free to write this down. But do you believe that our elections are safe and secure? Will you trust the primary and general election results? And what changes, if any, would you call for the State Election Commission to make?
No, I do believe South Carolina elections are safe and secure. I will respect the results of the primary and the general election, in part because I'm on the election subcommittee of the South Carolina Senate Judiciary Committee. And several years ago, in the aftermath of COVID, the 2020 debacle, we made sure in South Carolina we do not have no excuse early absentee voting. You can't just mail a ballot here in South Carolina. You can't get 17 ballots and send them in. We made sure we had no excuse early voting, which has already started now in South Carolina to ensure that people have a chance to vote at their convenience. In South Carolina, our elections are secure. In fact, nonpartisan foundations have found South Carolina to be one of the most secure elections in the country. That's in part because of a Republican supermajority in the Senate and a committee of which I was a part. That being said, I will continue always to support any effort to make sure that our election rolls are clean, that people who are dead or illegal are not voting. That's why I passed a constitutional amendment in 2024 to prohibit any illegal from ever voting in South Carolina. And we can always do better. But I will tell you, your vote will count in South Carolina. Will make it hard for illegals to cheat and easy for people to vote.
Congresswoman Mace.
Well, first of all, one of the things that South Carolina can do to ensure that our elections stay secure is to purge our voter rolls more frequently than we do right now. I would like to see our voter rolls cleaned up every year or two so that we ensure that those who are deceased, passed away, moved away, don't have an opportunity to vote in multiple states, because your question didn't actually address that. When the 2020 election happened, I heard from multiple people that received multiple ballots for different states because they had just moved or moved a year or two before and were still on the voter rolls of the old states. Those are things that we need to look at, engage, but also today, in Columbia, South Carolina, a friend of mine received a voting sticker in Spanish. We have driver's license tests that are not in English. We need to make sure that our state doesn't go the way of blue states like California, New York, or Pennsylvania, where they're allowing illegals to get licenses and somehow now they're able to vote in our elections too. We have to make sure that American citizens are voting in American elections.
Congressman Norman.
You know, our right to vote and to make sure it's safe and secure, I don't think it's there in South Carolina now. I mean, look at the turmoil we've had in the Election Commission. I asked 3 years ago when Biden was letting everybody in, giving the driver's licenses and Social Security numbers for a list of new residents in South Carolina that were given a driver's license and new on the rolls. Couldn't get it. They said go to the Department of Homeland Security. Ask again. I said, well, why can't you get it here in the state? And they said, well, it's too much work. I said, okay, well, give me a year's worth. They didn't do that. When I do a forensic audit of every agency in South Carolina, we're going to get to the bottom of the money that's spent, which our election commission spent money that was not authorized and found to be fraudulent to get. We're going to root that out and shine a light on this election commission and make it as safe as we can make it.
Thank you. Congresswoman Mace, this next question starts with you. Governor Henry McMaster signed legislation into law that taxes income up to $30,000 at 1.99% and income over $30,000 at 5.21%. That's down from 6% and begins when folks file their taxes next year. This legislation also puts the state on track for future tax cuts based on revenue growth on the path to zero. Everyone here says taxes should be cut further, even immediately phasing them out. So income tax revenue does make up about 45% of the annual budget. So please be specific and tell us how you would cut taxes further.
Sure. I'm the only candidate that has a detailed plan to eliminate the state income tax. And you can go and read that plan at nancymace.org. So we have about a $41 billion budget. One of those buckets is the general fund. I would freeze spending at 2023 or 2024 levels, which is post-COVID. It would be about $11.6 billion. For every dollar over that would be a permanent tax refund to you, the taxpayer. It would take about 2.5 years to get us down to zero from where we are right now. We need just over $5 billion to do that. That leaves plenty of room, wiggle room, if you want to spend a little bit of dollars on potholes or roads and bridges, et cetera. This year alone, we had an extra $2.7 billion in the general fund. So in year one, if I were governor right now, I could cut everyone's state income tax across the board by 47%. But we can't stop there. People who are on fixed income need to make sure that we're not taxing their Social Security, that their Medicare costs go down, that they're paying less in property taxes, because people, especially our seniors, are being taxed out of their homes now because property taxes have gotten so expensive.
Gotcha. Congressman Norman.
South Carolina is one of the most expensive states to locate to and for existing residents. Look, we don't have a income problem in South Carolina. As like Nancy said, we've had surpluses. We got a spending problem. The only way that I will base how much we're going to cut the income tax, and we will, particularly the homestead exemption, we will raise that. But the bottom line, I've got to know where's the waste, the fraud, and the abuse. And a forensic audit will show that. And before I tell each one of you, I'm going to cut your taxes, what's going to have to be eliminated? I will put it online, and I will justify everything and let you, the people, say, well, this is what we feel needs to be cut. And then I will prioritize remaining money to the important things, as I mentioned, roads and bridges. The things that matter most about this state, preserving our water, preserving our environment. I will put the things in the right place, but only after I do a forensic audit.
Senator Kimball.
Look, I believe in eliminating the state income tax completely. And I'm actually the only person on the stage that's ever introduced that in the South Carolina legislature. In 2022, I introduced a plan that would eliminate the state income tax entirely within 13 months. I'm going to have my staff, they better be watching, post up the bill tonight. Put it on social media. Make sure everybody can read it. because that was an impetus for the major tax cuts we've actually passed. We reduced taxes by over $2 billion 2 years ago, another $657 billion in tax cuts this year in the Senate alone. Once we get through the budget, we're going to continue to cut both income and property taxes. Now, Lieutenant Governor Evans said repeatedly that she's the only person who has a plan to do this, and she cut those taxes. Let me be very clear. In South Carolina, the Lieutenant Governor has as much power as Confederate money and a modern bank. There was never a vote cast by Lieutenant Governor for that. The bill that introduced that was me, and I worked with Senator Harvey Peeler of Gaffney, who's the most conservative finance chairman we've ever had, to cut taxes, and I know how to actually eliminate them.
Congressman Norman, this question starts with you. Medical marijuana is not legal in South Carolina, but the Department of Justice just moved to reschedule medical marijuana products from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 controlled substances. Would you support or block legislative efforts for medical marijuana in the state? Also, would you sign a bill to ban or a bill to regulate hemp-derived THC drinks and gummies?
First of all, the hemp issue we have in South Carolina and the THC this you can buy at any convenience store is ruining our youth. Medical marijuana is a gateway drug. And to say medical marijuana, how do you regulate that? There's medicine out there that any doctor will tell you accomplishes the same effect that marijuana does. I'm not for giving further rights on marijuana. I'm on the hemp. Originally, and when it came through the General Assembly years ago, it was for making rope. Well, that was the least of what it was doing. It was a bait and switch, and now we're paying the price on that. So I'm going to be very strict on the drugs that are allowed in this state, and we'll drive a hard bargain to legalize them and make them more available when it's really a ruse just to get the gateway of drugs in this state, and I won't do that.
Senator Kimbrell.
Well, like everything else, I've actually had to vote on this and work on it in the South Carolina legislature. So I do not support recreational marijuana in South Carolina. I've always opposed that, always will. That being said, I worked with Senator Tom Davis of Beaufort a number of years ago to strengthen a medical marijuana law that would be sure that it's never going to be where you can burn leaf walking down the street, but you could also help veterans with PTSD. And the amendment that I offered that he supported and passed was ultimately to make sure it goes to a pharmacy with some kind of medical authorization. As the THC drinks, there's a lot of folks that use THC drinks even to sleep. There's church ladies at the Baptist church who take THC drinks even to sleep. I don't support banning them, but I support regulating them. No 14-year-old or 18-year-old should be able to buy a THC drink in South Carolina. This year in the Senate, we passed legislation that would ensure those drinks are behind the counter with a 21 and up ID and that gummies are in a liquor store. I have no problem with therapeutics. I have a problem with people getting high for recreational purposes, and I've actually fought on that in the legislature.
Congresswoman Mays.
Thank you so much. We absolutely need regulation for hemp and hemp-derived products here in South Carolina. We don't have that now. That is something the General Assembly needs to take up. I've worked on it at the federal level. And President Trump just rescheduled cannabis for medical purposes only to Schedule 3. And it's going to happen in our country, and the state of South Carolina is not ready for it. There is not a bill right now to protect children from getting access to these things. And make no mistakes, drugs are here, whether it's opioids, whether it's cannabis, whether it's other types of drugs. You can walk down the street, and in some places in South Carolina, you can smell it. And when you talk to folks at our airports where they're catching these people with drugs, they're shipping it in, they're flying it in on airplanes. It's already here. There are a lot of cannabis products from the state of California. What we need to do is make sure when people are breaking the laws, that they're going to jail, because that's not happening in South Carolina, where we're talking about someone who's using drugs, selling drugs, or we're talking about convicted pedophiles, et cetera. No one goes to jail in our state for the crimes that they commit.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Question 8 goes to you, Senator Kimbrell. A recent Winthrop poll found that 67% of South Carolinians said they find grocery costs as difficult or very difficult to afford. Around 59% of respondents said that they find that healthcare costs, including prescription medication, are difficult to pay for, as well as housing costs such as rent and mortgages. What can you do as governor to alleviate these specific cost pressures?
Well, number one, I go back to what I've said tonight repeatedly. You get rid of income taxes and make sure every family has more money in their pockets to pay for goods. That does also mean we need to reduce regulations. I was a co-sponsor of a major legislative overhaul this year of regulatory reform to ensure that we don't have so many regulations in this state. There are 5,500 regulations. 5,500 regulations, leading to 20,000 new rules for every single business in this state. So if that's your grocery store, that's your pharmacist, that's your local deli, 20,000 rules tied to 5,500 regulations run by bureaucrats you didn't elect. You want to reduce costs in South Carolina? You roll back the bureaucracy, you fire some folks and reduce the size and scope of government, reduce these regulations. I have fought on that in the legislature, and a combination of real meaningful income tax reform and regulatory reform goes an awful long way. Additionally, this year we had a $50,000 homestead exemption prior to this year in the Senate. I co-sponsored with Senator Peeler and others a bill to triple that homestead exemption to $150,000 to ensure that no senior loses their house because they can't pay a property tax bill.
Thank you, Senator. Congresswoman Mace.
I have talked to so many people across the state, particularly our seniors, and the cost of groceries for our seniors. Honestly, it's heartbreaking. I spoke to a woman in Myrtle Beach in Horry County the other day who's disabled. She works part-time. She makes $18,000 a year part-time. She misses the threshold for SNAP. She's just over it by about $3,000. And to listen to her story as a senior, to have to work part-time and not be able to put food on the table is very scary. She's going to be forced out of her home because of the property taxes. I had to sign her up for Meals on Wheels, and I've talked to senior after senior when we're talking about Medicare and the cost of Medicare. I've done many proposals on the campaign trail. I've written the bill where we don't tax groceries, we don't tax diapers or formula for babies, or we don't tax over-the-counter medications. There are a lot of things that we can do. In the meantime, before we get to eliminate the state income tax, there are things that the state legislature can do to make it less painful for people. But the last thing we want to see right now are seniors being forced out of their homes because of their medical costs, because of property taxes, and the legislature needs to take it up immediately.
Congressman Norman.
As CEO and as governor, you have to be an advocate for cutting regulations. How do you do that? You go to the businesses that are located here and ask them, if you were to relocate here again, what needs to be cut? What's just frivolous? Our electricity cost, and it's not just our grocery costs, our electricity cost is going up and up and up. When have you ever seen a reduction in that? Your medical bills, when have you seen a reduction in that? A lot of that is the frivolous lawsuits that are filed now. If a doctor has a bad outcome, then he faces a tremendous lawsuit. We've got to get a handle on that. I will be a voice for the businesses that are paying the tax. I will be a voice for each one of you who are burdened by taxes everywhere. We have a state that people are coming here, and we ought to have the taxes reduced. The General Assembly simply has not done it because it has not been a priority. I will highlight it as governor of the state.
Catch up. Congresswoman Mace, this question starts with you. What's your message to an executive of a major business who is thinking about investing millions, possibly billions of dollars in the state to create hundreds and maybe thousands of jobs?
Well, South Carolina is open for business. I am talking to those people now. In my run for governor, I've met a lot of folks that want to invest in South Carolina. They are very much put off by the high taxes in our state. The state income tax being the highest in the Southeast is inhibiting some of those businesses from coming here. We're still higher than North Carolina, Georgia, certainly Florida and Tennessee that have zero state income tax. People are dissuaded by the property taxes here in our state as well. But there are people that would like to invest. They want to bring energy here. For example, we want to see, nuclear energy or liquid natural gas and LNG. A lot of energy companies want to bring more energy into the market here in South Carolina if we can open up the regulations and have more competition, for example. But there are a lot of small businesses that want to come here too. And the number one inhibitor to those businesses coming and opening up shop in South Carolina are the cost of our taxes and the cost of living right now. But they're coming here anyway. We are the number one fastest growing state in the country. Horry County is probably the fastest growing county, or one of, in the entire country too.
Thank you. Congressman Norman.
Well, this is one area that I firmly believe that before you serve in office, you need to have made money and you need to have lost money. Politicians simply cannot make business decisions. Look at the recent Scout deal where they gave $1.3 billion of your tax money. And then the headquarters moved to Charlotte. I will recruit solid industries and businesses, but folks, they cannot tell Ralph Norman they're just going to increase jobs. They're going to have to tell me what are they bringing to the community. I'm not letting them use our natural resources. Why do I want to bring companies in here that are going to just not contribute, not have the things that make South Carolina great, but they just want to clog the streets up with traffic. I'm not going to do that. It's time to take a long look at who comes into this state. I'm going to be very particular on if any money is given. And companies that are coming in here now, they're going to have to pay for the electricity rather than use the electricity we don't have.
Senator Kimbrell.
In one of the Senate committees I was on a few years ago, we had somebody come in, one of the agencies came in to reauthorize the regulations. They said, we don't think we need these anymore because they're from World War II. They're tied to the GI Bill of 1947. Regulations shouldn't have eternal life. President Reagan used to say the closest thing to eternal life this side of heaven is government regulation. I agree. The best thing we can do to make South Carolina business friendly is get the agencies out of the way. As a senator, I get thousands and thousands of emails every single week from constituents asking for help. Typically, it's because of an overreaching agency that's completely incompetent and governed by 20,000 rules and 5,500 regulations that doesn't know what it's doing. In fact, if you put a swimming pool in right now in South Carolina, you have to have a payphone or at least a landline by the pool in case somebody falls in. That's insane. You're going to use a cell phone. Government is way behind the times. Reduce the regulations. I've already talked about my plan to eliminate the income tax. I've actually worked on doing it. Eliminate the income tax, reduce the agencies, fire the bureaucrats. That's the way forward.
Thank you, Senator. Congressman Norman, this question starts with you. And I also asked this during the AG debate, so interested to hear y'all's take on it as well. But how would you work with federal immigration officials when it comes to any potential operations or sweeps of illegal immigrants? And also, what is your message to those with immigration status and legal protections who are living, working, and paying taxes in South Carolina?
First of all, you go to law enforcement and they need to work with ICE agents need to work with law enforcement. Law enforcement needs to have an open door for them. Look, we got to protect the people. You get the criminals out of this state. You're either legal or you're not legal. And what this president has done to correct the disastrous Biden administration is get the criminals out of America. And so the law enforcement will help us as long as the cities and counties go along with them and don't try to fight them, as you've seen in Minnesota and many other states. That's not going to happen here. No sanctuary cities. And you've got to be legal here. If you're not legal, you go back. That's the only way that I know to really make sure this state is productive and that everybody here, there is a legal way to come to South Carolina and across the country, and it's you do it the legal way, not the illegal way.
Senator Kimbrell.
Look, we never can have sanctuary cities in South Carolina, and you can grow the economy without turning South Carolina into California. 3 years ago in the legislature, there was a bill that was introduced in the House and somehow made it over to the Senate that would granted licenses, professional licenses, real estate licenses, cosmetology licenses, medical licenses to illegal immigrants in the state. On the last day of the session, I blocked that bill because I believe in fairness. I believe in people coming here the right way and becoming a legal citizen of this state and of this country and contributing to our society. Now, you're often forced into a Hobbesian choice saying, do you not support immigration if you don't support illegals getting licenses? I'm married to a first-generation legal immigrant who came here the right way, did the right things, and built businesses of her own. So, needless to say, I love an immigrant, immigrants in general, but certainly my favorite immigrant. At the end of the day, we cannot allow illegal immigration in South Carolina, and I would support working with federal law enforcement and every single state enforcement agency in South Carolina to ensure that people have the right to succeed here if they play by the rules of getting licenses properly and coming to this country in the right way.
Congresswoman Mays.
South Carolina has banned sanctuary cities, sanctuary policies, but two years ago in 2024, we had a sanctuary sheriff by the name of Kristen Graziano. I'm the only candidate running for governor who stood up and fought back against Kristen Graziano. She let illegal aliens out who are rapists, who are murderers, who are pedophiles out onto the streets of South Carolina. And I nearly single-handedly, obviously with the help of voters in Charleston County, we ended her career because I fought back against those sanctuary policies, even though they weren't right or legal here in South Carolina. I stood up, and I took a lot of heat for that. I'll be like Governor Ron DeSantis. He has great immigration policies, $1,000 a day fines for people who aren't following the law and hiring illegals. I would deputize our agents to help the president deport illegal aliens. We have a lot of facilities in the state, over 400, that could house illegal aliens as they're being deported. There are a lot of things that we can do as a state to help the president in those deportations. And I'm not beyond having a patrol that go by Home Depot at 6 a.m. every day either to find them up, round them up, and deport them too.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Kimball, this next question starts with you. South Carolina is projected to hit 6.6 million residents by 2040. Residents joke that the state is too full. What specific legislation do you think is needed to help keep up with the growth?
You mean besides me putting up signs saying South Carolina's full? Look, I worked with Senator Tom Davis of Beaufort on concurrency legislation this year to ensure that we do not allow our infrastructure to be completely outpaced by growth. I'll give you an example from Spartanburg County in the district I represent. There's a little farm tractor road that's not big enough to really handle a Massey Ferguson, but yet we allowed county council, because there is no concurrency legislation, to build hundreds of houses, to approve the building of hundreds of houses right on this road. It turned it into a traffic nightmare on the way to one of the most popular middle schools in my district in Spartanburg County. We can never allow that to happen. I support private property rights, but I also support South Carolina being a state of beauty and geography and great culture. You can only preserve that if you don't allow it to be completely overrun to the point we lose our culture, heritage, and identity. So I support concurrency legislation to empower every municipality and every county to ensure that we allow for growth and protect private property rights, but we do not allow neighborhoods to be completely overrun where schools, roads, and infrastructure can't handle it. Concurrency is the answer, and I've supported that in the South Carolina Senate.
Congresswoman Mays.
South Carolina is the fastest growing state in the nation. And I've heard story after story from voters across the state campaigning for governor about road projects gone wrong. In fact, you can go to my Facebook at Nancy R. Mace and look at the list of roads. I'm keeping track of them that everyone has told me about that are in arrears and in shams. We need to audit South Carolina's Department of Transportation, number one. Second, we need to go after as much federal funding and resources as we possibly can. I brought in and helped support and obtain the largest infrastructure grant in state history to the tune of $195 million. I'm about to secure the highest grant above that any day now, almost $300 million for roads and bridges in just my congressional district. Imagine what I can do as governor, bringing in federal resources when I'm doing that for everyone's congressional district. I have a great relationship with the president and the administration. I've been very good at finding federal grant funding and then bringing those dollars home for those projects. And I would love to do that with your vote on June 9th for the entire state of South Carolina.
Congressman Norman.
You know, in South Carolina, for every one person that leaves the state, you have two coming in. Uncontrollable growth is not good. Our roads and bridges, as we have said, is not ready for it. Our education system is not ready for it. Our judicial system is not ready for it. Why? Has it got into shambles? Because you've had rhino politicians who have promised one thing and promised to focus on the major things. They failed. Yet our budget continues to double, our cost of government. So again, it's the forensic audit that I will examine and I will move on it. It won't just be a book when I get it that I'll put on a shelf. We're going to make changes on it. We're going to make sure that if you come into this state as a company, you're going to pay your way. And we're simply not ready for it now. Ask any city, Charleston, Greenville, Spartanburg. So many areas are overrun. I'm not going to let that happen. We've got to educate the local officials to drive a hard bargain with data centers and the harm that it's doing to the environment.
Thank you. Congresswoman Mace, this question starts with you. In 2009, Governor Mark Sanford disappeared for nearly a week. His family, security, staff, and citizens didn't know his whereabouts, which later turned out to be Argentina. Starting under Governor Nikki Haley's administration and after committing to do so in response to a reporter's question, her office published her public schedule weekly, along with notable calls and meetings that she took the previous week. Governor Henry McMaster has continued this practice. Will you commit to continuing the same practice? And is there anything else that you would do to make the office more transparent?
100%. I'm a very transparent member of Congress now. I actually give out my personal cell phone. If you're an undecided voter, I have people call me and text me all the time to ask questions. I am an open book and would encourage transparency, not just in the governor's office, but it should go to the judges, to elected officials. We have a real history of covering up corruption in our state. You can't find the ethics complaints of our judges that need to be impeached in South Carolina, or the DEI judges that are letting violent criminals out. We have a state legislature. We had a state senator a couple months ago talk about how someone offered him $100,000 to vote a certain way on a bill. You're going to have the most transparent and the most accountable governor's administration in South Carolina history. I've seen this broken system up close and personal. I sit on court hearings. I sit in on council meetings. In fact, I sat in a court hearing with SILFAB on the Move SILFAB group last week that is angry about what's going on with heavy chemicals in their neighborhood. I'll be there for the people of South Carolina.
Congressman Norman.
Absolutely. Every schedule that I have when I'm governor will be out there for you to see, every daily log. And the same will be for the heads of our different agencies that will appoint people who are competent and who are glad to share what they're doing. We need to educate the people on concrete actions that we take. And it won't just be words. You know, we've all seen fake resumes of those who tout all these things. I will be able to put concrete examples of what my administration is doing, how we're handling it, and how each person who is heading a different agency, how he'll have accountability. And that's what you do in your family businesses. That's what any industry does. You got to have accountability. We have lost that in South Carolina. It's kind of run amok. And when have you heard of an agency who was caught prior to spending money when he should have been caught to prevent it from spending our money in the first place? It's your money. It's not the politicians' money.
Senator Kimbrell.
Well, I'll be clear. I've never been to Argentina. I have no plans to go there. But I worked for the Sanford administration briefly in 2005. And so I watched that whole debacle not long after that in real time. We need transparency in state government. And before I come back to the scheduling issue, yeah, of course, I'd publish my entire schedule, talk about every meeting I have. But we had a comment earlier about judicial reform and having some of these judges impeached. We need serious judicial reform in South Carolina. That's a big part of transparency, and any governor that's going to do it needs to make sure it happens. We cannot allow lawyer legislators to practice for the very people they appoint and play political games that we've seen repeatedly over and over in this state for decades. I sponsored legislation 2 years ago to make sure we actually bring the cap up. We can't rule out all the conservatives, but I support a governor making the appointment of a judge and the Senate confirming it. We need a federal model on that where there's true transparency and checks and balances. But yes, I will publish my schedule, and I have no intentions of taking private flights to Buenos Aires.
It's good to know. Congressman Norman, a recent Winthrop poll found that 46% of all respondents think having people of many races, ethnic groups, and nationalities makes the United States a better place. Do you believe that having people of many races, ethnic groups, and nationalities makes America better, worse, or no difference at all?
Well, I don't look at the color of your skin. I look at your qualifications. The color of your skin or your ethnicity matters nothing to me. I want to know what you're going to do. Are you competent in what you're about to undertake, particularly when you're being paid for with taxpayer dollars? So, you know, I think it's more important to put competent people in place who love what they do and who have a servant's heart. That's what we're missing in South Carolina. You got too many people who are just put in positions for political paybacks. With Ralph Norman, that is not going to happen. It's going to be competent people. And I don't care what the color of your skin is. I want to make sure you're a true conservative. You go to work, and you want to return and have a return on investment for the people of this great state. We haven't had that in a long time. It's going to happen under my administration, and that's not even a question with me, and I look forward to doing that.
Senator Kimbrell.
My family's been in South Carolina since 1746, so I'm native South Carolinian all the way through and through. But the motto of our country, one of the two mottos, we have in God we trust, but also e pluribus unum, out of many, one. Many of my best friends, my wife, were born in other countries, born in other states. But when they came to South Carolina, they adopted the culture and values of our state. Belief in individual rights, belief in faith and family, belief in freedom given to us by ultimately God and a government of, for, and by the people. What's happened in this country, though, is the hard left has divided us. Instead of e pluribus unum, it's e unum pluribus. Divide us to conquer us. Divide everybody into easily demographical subgroups that they can win elections with. As governor, I'm proud of South Carolina. I love this state and been here for my family for over 250 years. I want people to come here and join our culture, not come here and try to tear it down. If you want to come to South Carolina and be part of it, welcome. If you want to destroy it, get out.
Congresswoman Mays.
I do not support DEI. It's not about the color of your skin. It is about assimilation. If you look at what's going on in Europe and overseas, the invasion that's happening there, it cannot happen here. But if you go to Minnesota, if you go to Michigan, you hear the Muslim prayer calls hour after hour after hour. Those are not our values here in America. I want to make sure that if people are going to be here, that they do assimilate to our values, that we don't have violence in the streets like what's going on in Europe, especially with the young girls being assaulted over there by these immigrants, violently assaulted. Look at Minnesota, look at Michigan, look at the fraud, the Somalian fraud that has happened, that they're still here, and billions of dollars of your tax dollars are gone because they failed to assimilate. They failed to follow our laws. And that will not happen under a Mason administration. That will not happen in South Carolina. The last thing I want to say is that I don't believe that those who are foreign born should be elected to office either. If it's good enough for the president, it's good enough for everybody else.
Thank you. Senator Kimball, this next question starts with you. The South Carolina Senate failed to advance a new congressional map that would have flipped the 6th congressional district Republican. Would you support redistricting in 2028? And do you think this will start happening every 2 years instead of every 10 years? How do you see redistricting going forward?
Look, I supported a 7-0 map in South Carolina, and the President of the United States, with whom I voted on every single vote, procedural or otherwise, on this issue, asked for us to do this at the beginning of the year. The current governor rejected that, or kind of rebuffed it, said we shouldn't do it, kind of poo-pooed the idea, until after we adjourned. The day after the legislature adjourned, he called us back to a special session too late to actually advance the bill. I still voted every single time for cloture, to end filibusters, to ensure a 7-0 map for South Carolina. Unfortunately, the governor chose to play politics and only did it when it helped, frankly, advance his family's interest or his lieutenant governor's interests. Yes, I believe South Carolina needs a 7-0 map. I believe we could get there. If you look at South Carolina right now, the congressional district that's the least economically advantageous, has the highest levels of poverty, less opportunity, is the 6th district. We could redistrict South Carolina in a way where it's a 7-0 map, but it can't be done on a Hail Mary pass for political purposes the day after the legislature adjourns for the year. I voted for it, but we need to do it better next time and not play pure politics with what's important to South Carolina.
Congresswoman.
I was the first person to call for a special session. I was joined by other folks who are running for governor. I texted the president advising him of when that special session should be. At 5:01 p.m. is when the governor should call it, and that's what happened. But I'm afraid we're going to run out of time. I want to bring up an issue about data centers. We've not had a chance to talk about data centers yet. It has come up on the campaign trail over and over and over again. I'm the only candidate up here running for governor who has called for a 1-year moratorium on data centers. I don't want to see your land stolen, your property rights taken away like we're seeing in Georgia or Kentucky to build these data centers. You're being saddled with the costs of the data centers, their infrastructure, the water, the electricity. There's a bill going through the state legislature now that they're saying is a ratepayer protection bill for data centers. It's not. It's going to saddle the ratepayer, you the taxpayer, you the consumer. Your electricity is already going up. It's going to go up even higher because you're going to be stuck paying that bill. You're going to have to pay all the water, all the electricity, all the infrastructure. Please go to nancymace.org. Look at the amendments I wrote for that data center bill so we can fix it so that you aren't saddled with those costs.
Congressman Norman.
District 6 should have been redone back when I called for it, when I announced in July of last year. The truth of the matter is the politicians, the elected officials, Democrat, Republicans, did not want to do it. If you look at District 6, it's represented by Jim Clyburn, who voted for a man in Joe Biden who unleashed all of the criminals, those who came to America illegally. And it should have never happened. He offset, we got 7 congressmen, and his vote was always offsetting another congressman. So we effectively had 5 conservatives. It should have been done, but the politicians played politics with it. When I'm governor, I'm going to call for it day one, and I'm not just going to call for it. I will have a press conference. I will show the existing district how it doesn't make any sense. It will change it when it's fair. The people in District 6 are good people. They deserve a map that's drawn fairly, and I will do that, and it'll be a great day to redo that district.
Congresswoman Mace, Governor McMaster made it a priority to get starting teacher pay to at least $50,000 by the time he left office. It's in the budget this year for $50,500. Would you continue to increase starting teacher salaries going forward?
I sure would. My mother is a retired teacher. This was an issue that we worked on when I was in the state legislature 7-8 years ago, and it's something I would continue. They work hard. They are raising our kids in our public education system. The other thing we need to do, because of the exodus of teachers that we had, we need to look at there are regulations. A teacher, someone who has a PhD in chemistry, for example, because there isn't reciprocity in our state with other states or with other degrees, couldn't teach high school chemistry even though they have a PhD in chemistry. I have a master's in writing. I am not able to teach English writing classes because I don't have that teaching certificate. And with the exodus of people, teachers leaving because it's so difficult and the pay is so low, we also need to look at ways to bring more teachers into that pipeline so we can teach our kids to be better than ever. And the other thing I wanted to add too, since we're talking about education, we need 2 distinct tracks for high school students, one for the kid going to college, one for the kid who isn't, so they can be certified in a trade so they can get a good paying job when they graduate.
Thank you. Congressman Norman.
Yeah, teachers are underpaid, but if you talk to teachers who have left the profession, it's for a lot of other reasons too. The wokeness that's allowed to exist in our public schools, and we cannot miss and neglect the next generation of young people. Teachers are in the battle, and they're like law enforcement. They don't do it for the money. They do it because they love what they're doing. I found most teachers enjoy what they're doing, but we've got to go to them. And say, what can we do to make this thing better? The money is not, it's an issue in some people, but it's other things that are getting in the way for them to be able to teach in the classroom, to not be overburdened with officials that within the district that don't have the interest of the child. And that's who we have to put first. And I think we'll find a solution to it, and I think we'll help this state out. How long are we going to be 41st and 42nd in education? Makes no sense.
Senator Kimbrell.
Look, teachers are important. They play an important role in all of our lives. I still remember the name of my kindergarten teacher, Linda Williams, and my great coach in middle school, David Whitaker. The point is, these are people who have served our state, served our people, and shaped our lives. I voted for every single teacher pay increase the Governor McMaster proposed, and I appreciate him working on that effort. I worked with him. That being said, we've also got to reprioritize some of the money to spend. If you look at our state budget, every single, of all the line items in our state budget, the single greatest allocation goes to the Department of Education. I know schools that have 500 kids have 10 assistant principals. That's ridiculous. You got teachers buying pencils out of their own pocket because you have a bunch of bloat at the top. You got to reallocate that money to the classroom, make sure it's actually going to the teachers who teach the kids. And then I support an all of the above universal school choice option. I'm a product of the public schools. My son goes to a public school. That being said, I believe in an all-of-the-above approach to homeschool, charter schools, private schools. Every single child in South Carolina gets to learn in the way their parents deem fit.
Gotcha. Congressman Norman, this is the last question. It's going to be 20 seconds. It's going to be kind of hard for everyone to do in 20 seconds, I think. But America celebrates its 250th birthday in just over a month. What makes you proud to be an American?
What makes me proud to be a South Carolinian and America is faith, family, and freedom. And that's one thing I've loved about going around the state. The core values that each community has, regardless of where you go, is there. That's what we have to accentuate. And that's what's great about this country. And that's why we have to empower we the people.
Gotcha. Senator Kimbrell.
One of my favorite quotes in American history, ironically, comes from a Democratic president. It was John F. Kennedy, who probably more Republican than not these days. But he said that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. One of the things we have to remember in this 250th anniversary is that our rights come from a power greater than government. Government is here to guarantee your rights, not grant them. If we ever forget that, if we ever forget we're one nation under God, as Reagan said, we'll be a nation going under.
Congresswoman Mays.
Our U.S. military. I recently lost my father, who was a Vietnam War veteran, 2-time combat veteran, and the most decorated graduate combat veteran the Citadel has ever had. And when I look at the faces of our men and women in uniform who've given everything, including their life, to our country, that makes me the proudest American.
Wonderful. And we have to leave it there tonight. Thank you to all of our candidates. You can watch this debate and more election coverage at youtube.com/SCETV News. And we will return Wednesday, June 3rd at 7 p.m. for the Democratic gubernatorial primary debate. And we will carry it on South Carolina Public Radio and our social media platforms as well. And then join us on June 9th for our live election night coverage that starts at 8 p.m. I'm Gavin Jackson, and from all of us here at South Carolina ETV and Public Radio, thanks for tuning in and good night.